Welcome forward here with the Consciously Creating Circumstances with George Winslow, Plummer. This chapter is entitled All is One. Now we begin to catch a glimmer of what it is that enables some people to succeed far beyond their apparent abilities. Remember that we do not see their real abilities. Perhaps some of those whom we may have envied or called lucky have got hold of this great truth that is beginning to unfold to us in our study of the invisible cause of visible effects. We see that all of these invisible causes focus down to the action of the universal mind, of which our individual minds are an expression. We see too that these individual minds of ours operate in two ways, subjectively and objectively, and that this subjective mind in each of us can be controlled by our objective mind, and that the activity of the subjective mind is directly solely toward carrying out orders, absolutely automatically, without any will of its own. If this ability of the objective to direct the subjective extended only to the usual subjective work of respiration, digestion, etc., such control would scarcely ever be needed, would it? Therefore, are we not justified in searching for some other vastly more important reason for its potential control by the objective? Nature does not develop faculties unlessly. This point will be found to rest on the absolute unity of all things in the universal mind, regardless of their apparent physical separateness. This idea is so essential to further understanding of our theme that we shall devote some time now to getting clearly fixed in our consciousness how this can be and is. I do not propose to lead you through a maze of metaphysics on this search, so we shall take an illustration or two that will fully explain this idea of unity and the absolute necessity of realizing it. You are familiar with a cogwheel. Have you ever realized what a wonderful symbol of cosmic truth it is? Probably not, for we do not ordinarily look for symbols in such commonplace articles. The cogwheel has its hub, spokes, rim, and teeth. Now, let the hub represent the universal mind. Let each spoke represent a human being, a race, a nation. Call the rim the cycle of life. Let the teeth on the rim represent the individual incidents and experiences of life. First to engage our attention, First to engage our attention is the fact that all the spokes have their common origin in the hub, the universal mind. The next thing is that in that common center of origin, each of the spokes contact and is a part of the central hub. Likewise, in the universal mind of all men, races, and nations are one and a part of each other. But as each spoke goes out towards the rim, towards the cycle of life, it becomes seemingly separated, and the place where each touches the rim is far apart from its neighbor. I say seemingly separated, for in reality, each spoke joins each other, spoke in the hub, and each is a part of the whole wheel. Human spokes in the wheel of life too often entertain the false idea that they are separate. that the individual means to be different from each other. Right here is where human error begins. The coherent, united nation is all-powerful. Groups of men who work in unity become all-powerful. The individual man who thinks himself a law unto himself fails. He has lost his strength in losing his realization of the essential value of unity. Let him recall with Emerson that everything in nature contains all the powers of nature. Everything is made of one hidden stuff. End of quote. Now, as a cogwheel revolves, each spoke, in turn, has to bear its own share of weight and strain. And as each tooth is engaged, representing an incident of experience in the cycle of life, so each human spoke has to bear the full force of that experience, and each human spoke also receives the transmuted force of the experience that every other human spoke bears. Perhaps one human spoke, thinking itself alone, separated from its brethren, deserted, neglected, picked on, feels that it is bearing an undue share of the burden. Really it is not, for it is simply performing its own share in its own time, obeying the laws. Quote, "Bear ye one another's burdens," quote unquote. So much for that illustration. Think it over before going on, and realize that actual unity of all seemingly separated things. Now take a sheet of paper. Punch 5 holes in it and insert your finger through them. To a person opposite you, the 5 fingers represent 5 separate things. Each finger seems to have the power of individual motion and seems to be completely separate and apart from its neighbor. But to you, back of the paper, behind the scenes, beyond the veil, as it were, appears the inescapable fact that all fingers are united, that they spring from one common unity, that they derive their power from the same source. Now do you get the point involved? When we get discouraged, when the world seems haywire, when we feel that our backs are to the wall with no help visible, it lowers our ability, our power, our stamina, our force and energy, because we are thinking wrong. We think we have been cut off from our source. We think ourselves deserted, left alone, badly used, underappreciated, undervalued, underrecognized. When we have forgotten the extremely significant fact that we are one with our Creator, one in the universal mind, one with all the creative power in nature, that we cannot be alone, that we have all the creative and sustaining power in heaven and earth within us, waiting to be awakened when we know how. So our very first task in remodeling the things in our lives that do not suit us is to get fixed fast in our memories this fact of our unity with all things in the universal mind, for that fact gives us access to a far greater power than any we could ever before imagine as accessible to ourselves by ourselves. Do not go on until you realize and accept that fact. You are coming to the specific details of how to use that fact for yourself. But they will do you no good whatsoever unless you see the truth of what has stated up to now. Go into a huge power station. Observe a great dynamo capable of generating tremendous power. Its armature may be revolving at an amazing speed. The dynamo is ready for business at a second's notice, the mere pressing of a button or throwing of a switch. But that huge dynamo is useless until a demand is made upon it for power. The moment demand is made by throwing the right switch, the current goes forth over the wires. But the demand must be made. Not a unit of power goes forth until that demand is made possible. Repeat that again. Not a unit of power goes forth until that demand makes it possible. But if you do not know the dynamo exists, or do not believe it after having been told so, there is no use in telling you how to use it, is there? Now, let us bring this picture right home to ourselves. We have the source of power within ourselves, ready for business. No power will come from it to help us do the things we wish to do unless we recognize its existence and make a call on its power and direct it to the desired purpose. There is a specific way in which we can make that demand, a way in which we can set that power to work for us. It is the greatest power in the world, far greater than any dynamo invented by man, for it is the power that enabled man to invent the dynamo. Thus ends Chapter 3. On to Chapter 4, called The Great Link.